Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Laura Mignot, CEO of the experience agency D-Flash. Each week, we bring on a different business leader who's changing the game, and this week's episode is no different. I'm super psyched to have Hunter Hindman, who's the Chief Creative Officer at ARGONAUT, who's got a really incredible career and how he's been able to tell unique brand stories, and so it's going to be a great conversation. Have a listen. Hey, Hunter.
Hi, Laura. How's it going?
Good. It's a nice fall day here in New York, and I'm psyched to get some good interviews in, so I'm psyched to have you on the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
So I'm sure you've listened to previous episodes, and I asked the same question to everyone as the first question, because I'm always fascinated as to where the answers end up, and I'm sure yours will be no different. So Hunter, what was your first job?
My first job. My very first job that I ever had was actually at a bagel shop in Richardson, Texas. I think there was a craze of New York bagels going on, and the whole nation had to be a part of that. I think probably one of the most noteworthy things about that job, outside of it really taught me some work ethic in making a lot of coffee and baking a lot of bagels, was I actually got to meet Chuck Norris on the job.
That's amazing.
Pretty cool as a kid from Texas to be able to meet the man, the myth, the legend, Chuck Norris, while he was filming Walker, Texas
I was going to say, was Walker, Texas Ranger being filmed? Well, oh, that was one of my favorite shows as a kid.
Oh, it's the best, right?
It was, thinking back on it now, it was crazy, but then as a kid, it was such a good show.
Yeah, it doesn't really stand the test of time. When you go back and watch them, they're a little flat. But I will say I was pretty wide-eyed getting to give him bagels.
Although it seems antithetical that Chuck Norris eats bagels.
Right? And by the way, cinnamon raisin and blueberry bagels, that was his order.
Okay, that.
I know, it makes no sense.
It sounds like he was faking being a tough guy if he's having a cinnamon raisin bagel. Like, what in the, wow. But I'm sure you learned some incredible skills about like how to deal with people and their crazy orders, like Chuck Norris offering wanting a cinnamon bagel, which just blows my mind on so many levels. Wow.
Yeah, well, I know. It is interesting. I to this day, I use the service industry analogy a lot in what we do, in trying to make sure that we transcend being partners with our clients and truly understand that we are in that service industry. And while, it's a little different here because the customer isn't always right, I think you have to approach it with that same level of attention to detail and service and empathy for every customer that comes through the door.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of, I think it's interesting because every time I talk to someone and I ask what their first job is, and if their job was in some degree of customer service, they're like, yeah, leading with empathy and stuff is what I now do as a senior executive or a C-level executive at a company, because like I learned that a long time ago, and you never realize what actually sticks with you.
100%. You have to kind of go back to that well too. It's I think we'd all probably do pretty well if we went back and took on some of those first job roles again, and kind of had a bit of a reminder or a crash course in what it takes to have that empathy and really kind of get back to that notion of being in the service of others. What I do today feels like it's a long cry away from working in a bagel shop, but there's definitely some connections for sure.
Absolutely. So what is it you actually do now, Hunter?
Well, I am the founder and chief creative officer at ARGONAUT. I kind of feel like every day I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do. There's a plethora of things that I do when I walk in the door. But I think at the core of it, probably if I try to boil it down, I think I just strive every day to create just an awesome working environment, to create, exceptional ideas. And that's probably an oversimplification, but it's what we strive to do, I think, every day we all come into ARGONAUT.
And so how do you get to form an agency that works with some of the kind of coolest brands in the world? I was looking at Fitbit and I was like, wait, you guys did that. So how does that all happen? How do you go from giving Chuck Norris a bagel to founding this agency?
Well, there's a lot of steps along the way.
Oh, you just fast
That's for
forwarded.
sure.
That's all.
Yeah, just hit fast forward and you get right here and it's easy breezy. No, I mean there definitely was a very long crash course, I think, into advertising and marketing, and in between Chuck Norris and bagels and where I am now, I did get to work alongside, I think, some of the best in the industry, from Dan Wyden at Wyden and Kennedy to Jeff and Rich at Gibby Silverstein and Partners, and I think from a very early age, coming out of the bagel shop, I really had this intense desire to embrace this like apprenticeship kind of method. The idea that you go learn from masters versus going down the path of higher education or schooling. And it was definitely a bit of a gamble at the time, but it was a real deep passion of mine, and I saw a path forward to make it happen. And so my path from where I started to where I was. Actually, the first store opened up not too far from that bagel shop at the Richards Group in Dallas, Texas, where I came in as a massively unqualified intern, and probably was like the personification of fake it until you make it, say yes to everything, getting in the door there as an intern, and then had a bit of a winding road, again, just being able to work alongside and in some of the best creative shops in the industry.
Wow. So you walk into the Richards Group, you get that internship, and then you're off your way. Did you always know that you'd want to be in this neck of woods of advertising and creativity? Because it's interesting. I feel like there's everyone. No one has the same path when they start wandering into agencies and then working their way up.
I always knew I wanted to pursue something creative. I think, unfortunately, when I was younger, there really wasn't a lot of open doors for applying like art. I was a bit more of a fine artist in junior high and high school, and my dad kind of grew up as a fine artist, and he taught university for a while in sculpture and other kind of form making. And I didn't really see a way to make money doing art. I thought that was kind of a bit of a fool's errand. It wasn't really
Right.
going to lead to a thriving career. But luckily I got a couple of steers from my mother that actually connected me with some people at the Richards Group doing a photo shoot, and I fell in love with the idea that, wow, you can show up every day and get paid for your mind, for your creativity, to tell stories and to bring them to life, and that was really alluring. And I just got really lucky that I was given an opportunity to kind of get that sneak peek at an early age, and I think now it's really important that we hopefully try to inspire more people to realize that there is this whole career where you can kind of be this misfit and come in with creative ideas and have your ideas come to life on some of the world's biggest stages.
Well, that's the coolest part about being in this kind of wacky, weird world of creativity. That it opens doors, and then you go in these places that you never thought you'd go. And yeah, I oftentimes, to this day, my parents don't exactly know what I do, but they're like, okay, but you're in publications and stuff, so I get it. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but it's fascinating to see how we get here. So you've worked for the biggest guys in the industry, and then what makes you decide, you know what? It's been hella comfy working for like Wyden and Kennedy and Goodby, but I want to go out and do my own thing. What was that moment like for you? How did you get to the point where you're like, I can do this on my own and fly?
I think one thing that starts to happen when you come into your own, as far as starting to understand what your process is. And, I don't think it's an individualized thing from a standpoint of, it's an internal process. Sometimes that process is about how you work together with a group, how you collaborate, how you pull kind of other people together and kind of use their superpowers to make your ideas bigger. I think as a creative, you start to figure out what works best for you. And sometimes you're lucky enough to find that in a comfy home like Wyden and Kennedy or Gibby Silverstein and Partners or at another agency. And sometimes I think that you kind of can find yourself a little uncomfortable, like the jacket doesn't quite fit, and you slowly maybe start to feel as though you're learning more of what you don't want to do versus what you do want to do. And for me, it kind of came to that point where I was able to kind of beta and work and kind of try to transcend some of these agencies that have a lot of legacy processes and structure built in for good reason, because they're really successful and they know what they're doing. Right. But I just kind of found that I want to do it a different way. And it was getting to the point where it's like, why keep doing this in someone else's system when you could start with a blank slate? And I was lucky enough to find some incredible partners at Project Worldwide to help support us, and decided to venture out. It was a scary moment.
I'm sure. In there.
Yeah. Well, and we jumped out without any clients, which is like probably one of the first rules that that I always tell people: make sure if you're ever going to launch an agency, have a client, in your back pocket or something. It was a terrifying 6 weeks to start off with, waiting for the phones to ring, but luckily they did. And looking back now, I wouldn't change a thing. It's if anything, the only thing I'd probably give myself as a bit of advice is like, I would have done it sooner.
Awesome. And what was getting that first client like? Do you remember like the insane pitch, or was it someone who like believed in you guys and said we're going to go with you, versus going back to one of the biggies?
It was actually it was a really challenging decision to make. We were pretty fortunate that we were written up and had a really beautiful image of ourselves put into the New York Times. Actually, Wall Street Journal. I think it was Wall Street Journal, actually. No, New York Times. New York Times. Sorry, I'm challenging my recollection here. And Stuart Elliott wrote a really beautiful piece about startup agencies in San Francisco and what was happening at the time. And it, press works. We got a phone call within 48 hours from 3 major companies: Apple, Google, and Amazon.
Wow.
Probably 3 of the biggest players in the tech space. And they all wanted to work with us.
And who did you send champagne to afterwards?
Yeah, well, Stuart Elliott. I wish he was still writing out there. It was one of those really crazy moments, and we had a really tough decision ahead of us. But one of our core principles that we kind of launched on was people over brands, and really understanding that it's the people behind the brands that make them great, just like it's the people behind the agencies that make them great. And we happened to have someone we knew at Google, and the decision became really clear. We really believed in a person that was working over in that sector, and we were like, hey, we're gonna go with Google. And it was a really challenging 6 to 9 months working with them, and tons of starts and stops. But it was also eye-opening. They really, really taught us how to work quick, ideate quickly, collaborate with them. So in a lot of ways, it was one of the best training grounds as a new agency to have a client like Google.
Wow. And having a client like Google always gives you that stamp in where I'm like, yes, we can actually do this for other people too. And so along the way, what's sort of been the most challenging thing you've had to sort of rise above, endure, go through, walk through fire in order to kind of make it through?
I think just being the business leader and the founder of an agency, I think it's taught me, frankly, a lot of empathy for other business owners. It's also given me a lot of empathy for our clients and what they go through. And for me, and I know this is maybe different how some people look at it, and they'll say something like, business isn't personal, but I actually do think it's deeply personal. And understanding that so much of what you do becomes a reflection of the company you keep and the kind of entity you want to build. I think as part of that, one really big challenge for me was learning that perception's reality. You can have all the great intentions, you can do all the right things, but it's really how people feel about it, and the feelings you leave them with that matter the most. And that's been something that's, again, true of running a business like an advertising agency, but it's also very true of brands out in the world, because perception's reality is everything for them too. So in many ways, I think some of the struggles and the challenges of creating a brand from scratch, not putting your name on the door, and instead, trying to create a brand that stood for something that everyone would put their fingerprints on. There's a lot of great parallels to marketing and what we ask our clients to do every day.
Awesome. And where do you guys kind of currently sit today? Like, what's the stuff that's got you most fired up? I mean, I saw you guys have like the Fitbit business and some other fun stuff. What's the project or program that's like, this is some amazing stuff we're doing here?
Yeah, I mean, I think across the board, I think one of the really amazing things that has me excited is, we about a year ago took a step back and really took a hard look at like what our vision was as a company. What are we really good at? Coming up on 7 years in, what do we do well? And for us, we really distilled down to this idea that we create brand comebacks, that we're at our best, going right back to the start, with Google, when we take iconic brands and help them reinvent themselves, help them reintroduce themselves to the world. So the things that make me excited, we just completed some really, really great work for Carl's Jr. that was interesting to try to reimagine that brand. We've done some really fabulous work for Honey Bunches of Oats, the cereal that has really, I think, defied the category. I mean, the cereal business is hurting right now and having a lot of headwinds, but we're seeing a lot of growth, and we're seeing a lot of right now the work actually helping Honey Bunches of Oats thrive. I'm really, really proud of what we're doing with Cricket Wireless. That's a client that we've now had since almost the beginning. It's like 6 years now, that relationship. And, we're in 18 straight quarters of net growth for them in a really challenging category of the prepaid wireless space. And then, as you said, Fitbit, we're working with Fitbit again, and, in a whole series of kind of briefings to kind of, help kind of reframe that story. And that's super exciting too. So kind of, I don't know, left and right, I look around, there's a lot of cool stuff happening.
Yeah, I saw the stuff that you guys were doing with Cricket Wireless, and it's fascinating to me because that, they sit in a really oddball set of the universe, because you've got sort of the big three in terms of cell phone providers, and then you've got the universe of what prepaid looks like and what people assume and think prepaid looks like. How are you guys able to sort of figure out, let's tell a different story for these guys? And since they've been with you so long, obviously you guys have kind of cracked the code on it.
Yeah, I think from the very beginning, it kind of goes back to, and I guess we're going to keep hitting on this word, but empathy. Really understanding, what it takes, and what the customers that we're serving, how they kind of look at getting the most out of their money throughout their day, and kind of coming at it from a point where I would say at the beginning there was this kind of almost like value by need, like people that were just trying to find the cheapest phone price out there,
Mm-hmm.
which we are really competitive at, but really turning it to more of like the smarter choice, and really trying to kind of not make it just about a price war and that race to the bottom, to never lean into like mudslinging. We really wanted to be this kind of simpler, smarter choice for people. That really kind of took all of the fine print out of the wireless world, and we were able to build, I think, a brand, and a brand world together that really transcended, I think, some of the other pitfalls within that space, and that kind of, again, that race to the bottom of just chasing each other on price, but instead giving people a brand they could believe in and something to smile about in a category that otherwise people are pretty frustrated in.
Yeah, I thought it's funny because it's an interesting shift in the way the consumer behavior has changed. Like, I recently switched to Spectrum Mobile, because I got an obscene bill from T-Mobile, and I was beyond annoyed. I traveled internationally. We did a big activation in Cannes. Before I left, I'd asked to be like, hey, like I'm gonna be in Europe for basically a month. Like, what's going to be the deal? What do I have to add? And they said, yeah, you've got the international plan. And when I got back, apparently, no, I didn't. and I remember thinking, I've been a customer for 8 years. I have 6 lines because it's our, business company line. And you guys are just showing me no respect or even a degree of empathy. Because I'm like, dude, like, what are you doing here? And so I looked around at the marketplace, and I was surprised how the sort of, I don't want to call it the lower tier, just the different tier had changed from like when I first got switched over to T-Mobile 8 years ago, when there was like Metro PCS and Boost Mobile.
Yeah.
And saw what Cricket was doing as well as what Spectrum was doing, and then in the end, actually made sense. I could get it for even cheaper. But I would get the same level of service. And I, thinking as someone who, works in this industry, you wouldn't think to go that route. But I was like, well, actually, better customer service, good range. And they got it when I said, I'm going to bring 6 lines with me. So they're like, what can we do for you? So I definitely think it's never about the price anymore. It's about how you respond to your customers.
I completely agree. We try to put everything through the perspective of, Cricket is your friend in wireless, and how would a friend treat you, and really try to demonstrate that we really care, we really understand. And that's why in Cricket, you're never going to find any hidden fees, because just like a friend would always be straightforward and honest with you, we want to be that way. There's no credit checks, there's no annual contracts because we don't want to tie you down. And it really kind of comes back to, I think you're hitting the nail on the head, which is, for a long time we've tied ourselves up in these long annual contracts and feel kind of stuck in a place, but it also creates this real expectation versus if you go to the prepaid space, you have the choice to move whenever you want, you can change it up every month if you want to. And so I think that the brands, in the prepaid space really have to fight a lot harder to earn those customers. And I think it's really working. I think it's been a really thriving space, and it's one that Cricket's done really, really well in over the last 6 years.
And so for you guys, what's sort of the next kind of area or frontier you're going into? Because, it's interesting. I'm having a lot of these conversations with folks. We're talking about 2020 and it being a new decade. And for some brands, it's a restart. And for some brands, it's continuation. And for some brands, it's, flat out blue ocean. What are some of the conversations that you guys are having, and who's coming knocking on your door? Obviously not names, but just like what are you seeing trend wise?
I think one of the big trends that we're seeing is this kind of moving away from kind of that Mark Zuckerberg move fast and break things kind of approach. We're seeing a lot more of a return to like a sustainability of brand building. And unfortunately, I think that there's a lot of brands that are still playing catch up because most sales, when marketing organizations tend to kind of reward this short-term thinking of like extracting value through disruption and hacking and stealing, and versus really trying to have additive value of like looking at your brand health, building something that intangible value that comes with the expectation we can imbue into a brand, and lean into a little bit more of that. It's what you were just getting at, which is that irrational preference, that feeling you get of kind of trust for certain brands that are out there. So we're seeing a bit of a shift towards that, and I think with that, I'm also feeling the beginnings of a shift away from this era of all project-based work, and instead a return to more of an AOR style relationship, kind of longer-term relationship. Yeah, I mean, at least that's what we're noticing on our side. I can't say that that's true of everyone. I hear a lot of agencies bemoaning kind of the lack of that, but you look at across almost every, I think the average tenure of a agency client relationship is under 3 years now, and we have 4 clients in the building that are at or above that currently. The majority of the work we do is AOR because if you're a really trusted business partner, you need to get in there, and you really have to work alongside each other and have that depth of knowledge. And so, I hope, and I think that what's going to come in 2020, I think everyone's pretty nervous about some of the global kind of economic conditions and some of those headwinds again that might be slowing growth in some sectors. But for us, I think it's a chance for the big brands to really thrive again, for the iconic brands to kind of flex that muscle again and really be that trusted entity. And I think we're going to see it across category. And so we're trying to be ready to help them kind of, make it through this time. That it might, some brands will struggle, I have no doubt, and some companies, but there's also going to be those that really thrive, I think, under kind of what happens as we look forward to 2020 and everything that'll come with it.
Yeah, I think it's sort of a protected optimism is probably the best way I can sort of describe it, where it's like they're concerned about the economy, but I also feel because they're concerned, they want to sort of get back to being a bit more stable. But stable looks different than what it used to be. So like, we're seeing more people coming to us for like, longer series of events or more festival type stuff where they really get to connect with their consumers one-to-one versus, just sort of being at the places where they're expected to be. Because I think getting back to being the great brand means that you have to greatly connect with your consumer in all the ways that you can, in all the places that you can that feel authentic, as opposed to just like someone told me I needed to be at South by Southwest, so we're going to be here. Versus, well, actually, maybe if we made our own thing, it'd be a lot better.
Completely agree. I mean, the power. I think what you're getting at too. The power of taking up space in the world, that creating those experiences that really are in keeping with the brand, but doing it in a way that you're saying that's authentic to who you are and showing up in the places where it makes sense for you to be is massively important. But also, as you said, it's the longer term one. So it's that idea of building momentum and creating an expectation again in people's minds, so that you start to weave together those memory structures of what a brand stands for and keep being there. It's not about these like one and done kind of like flashes of interest. I think that those are great again for like a short-term kind of sales kind of push. But if you really want to build a lasting brand, and frankly, if you want to make your job easier over time, leaning into some more consistent brand building and making sure that every interaction that people have, every experience that they have, whether it's in a more traditional place or a really surprising place you're popping up, there is that consistency, that it all connects together, and that it starts to kind of create that sense of like trust and expectation in people's minds.
Yeah, I think it's funny because like we've never been more connected to brands day and age, but I also feel like a lot of brands feel like they've never been more disconnected. Like when it was like you had 3 channels and you would watch a Tide commercial, like that was it. You saw the Tide commercial on ABC or NBC or CBS, and then that was it. And now it's like, okay, you can see this Tide commercial anywhere, but depending on where I see it is how I'm going to respond to it. And so how you tell that story to me is going to make me decide whether or not I want to buy your product. And those ways have gotten more fragmented, but the story still remains. I want you to buy my product. I want to connect with you in a really unique and lasting way.
100%. I mean, I think that it's it goes back to like, how are you making people feel? It's not enough just to have that top of mind awareness of just seeing the logo out there, just showing up on those mass channels, but it's like, what stories are you giving me to tell, and what is that emotion you're leaving me with? Because again, emotional, I think, kind of base kind of brand building, it will always outpace the functional. And I think that's why we actually really love working in, with brands that are in kind of commodity categories sometimes, where the only preference that we can build is through the brand. There might be some innovation here and there and other things that you can do. But I think that people are so fast to copycat now that it really comes down to, again, that emotion you leave people with. And, that I think leads to a much more powerful and long-lasting connection with people.
Awesome. So what will you tell 25-year-old Hunter now that you've got all this wealth of experience and you've been through the ups and downs and craziness of building your own, going out on your own, building your own thing?
25-year-old Hunter. I would probably say you do you. Just keep being yourself, be weird, be who you are, trust your gut. And stop questioning whether you should start an agency. Just start one already. I would have loved to have a head start on this. Being again like 6 years in now, it would have been a lot of fun to have been on this ride. For the last 10, 15 years. I probably needed some of that experience I gained along the way, but I wouldn't mind kind of nudging myself and challenging myself to have done it sooner.
Got it. That makes sense. Yeah, because you're like, once you're in it, I know the same feeling. Once you're in it, like, why didn't I do this before?
Yeah, exactly, right? It's like, I should have just done this since day one. It doesn't work that way, but I do think I could have got a head start.
Yeah. So one of my favorite questions that I've started asking this year, and I'm fascinated to see where this is going to take you, is what do you do to escape? Like, what's your brand of self-care? I ask executives this because I think it's really important for people listening to understand that, like, even though you are shot caller and world changer and game changer, that you need to like disconnect and recharge, because otherwise you're gonna crash into a wall. So what's your thing? So I've had people say like it's a place they go for a drink around the corner or get a juice. It's going hiking or like push-ups. Like, what's for you that sort of I can like take a moment away and just like chillax?
Well, I think that, especially as like a leader, your presence is like the most valuable gift you can give to your people, but also to yourself. And for me, it's trying to find those moments where I can truly kind of be truly in my own head and release from any of the pressure or stresses or thoughts that are always, seem to be rattling around inside of my head. And for me, that's actually racing. I love to motorsports and getting onto. We live in Northern California, and there's some beautiful racetracks up here.
Yeah.
And there's just something about getting behind the wheel of a car. And really trying to have that connection with the machine and pushing yourself, but losing yourself in the flow, losing yourself in the moment. It's almost meditative. It
Okay,
is like
so
a true release of all focus except for what's at hand. And
that's
I don't get to
awesome.
do it enough, but when I do get to do it, I always feel great.
Awesome. Yeah. So, okay, small world. So the only time I've ever been to a NASCAR race was in
Mm-hmm.
Sonoma County.
It's the best one. That's the only one where they don't go around in a circle pretty much,
It,
They have to
it's, it
wind
was,
around, they crash a bunch, and
oh my
great.
gosh, it was, and so of course, because it's me, I was in the pit because
Oh,
I got friends everywhere. So I was like, if I'm going to do this, I'm doing it the ultra VIP way because I'm not needing to
love
stand.
it. You
And I
have to
gotta
go.
tell
Have you
you,
ever been to a Formula One race?
I'm sorry?
Have you ever been to a Formula One race? You have to go to a Formula One race. It'll blow
So
your
I've
mind.
been to Formula One in Montreal because my
Beautiful.
brother
Me
is
too.
obsessed. And I went, oh God, this is like going back 9 years ago with him and some friends of his. And it was the most bananas thing ever. I mean, I love cars. It's sort of like, I'm always a walking contradiction because people never understand what I actually love. I'm obsessed with cars. So going to Formula One like blew me away, and then going to the NASCAR race, I was like, "What in the world? This is awesome!" I'm also melting because it's 100 degrees out here, but
Incredible.
it was just so graceful to see. And like, I mean, I want to go to like, I definitely want to go to Formula One in Monte Carlo just because it's Monte Carlo.
That's
Um,
the place to go.
Yeah, but yeah, I get it when you see the drivers and they're before they get into the cars, and then you see like the gracefulness of the pit crew when they're like really doing yoga before they go and switch out the tires. You're like, what?
Yeah.
It's it's just fascinating to see, and you get to see like what it means to sort of be in that flow where like there is nothing else but like your hands on the wheel and going.
100%. It really is about letting go. There is this sound in the fury, I think, on the outside of the car, but in the moment, it's quiet, it's peace, and as you said, it takes a whole team to win a race. And it's the coordination of a pit crew, whether it be in NASCAR or Formula One. It's mind blowing. Getting an entire series of actions done in like under 2 seconds is a true feat to coordinate. 10, 12 people working in concert together. But yeah, next time you're in Sonoma or out this way, hit me up and we'll go out in a race car together. It'll be fun.
Oh my gosh, I'd love to, dude. Oh my gosh, yeah, sold. I think I'll be back on the West Coast in January, so I'll definitely hit you up.
Please do.
Um, my dream is to one day get an Aston Martin DB9, just because.
Ooh. Hey, we'll see what we can work out.
Hey, listen, you never know. Well, Hunter, thank you so much. This was such a delight. You have such incredible insights, and it's always lovely to hear someone else who loves cars like myself on the show. And thank you so much for being a part of it.
Thank you so much. It was a lot of fun.
And that's our show.